The tactical display painted Ambassador Lyra Davin's face in shades of red and amber. Each crimson dot represented a Ravager warship circling her world like vultures waiting for prey to stop breathing. Sanctuary Point had been screaming into the void for 3 weeks now, and the void had screamed back with silence. Lyra pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the command center, feeling the vibrations of another bombardment ripple through the structure. Somewhere above, energy weapons carved into protective shields that had already failed twice and been rebuilt with spare parts and desperate prayers. The engineers promised 12% strength remained. Lyra knew they were being generous. Behind her, the command staff worked in controlled chaos. A Delphian communications officer named Trell repeatedly broadcast distress signals on every known frequency. His 4 arms moved across controls with mechanical precision, but his eye stalks drooped with exhaustion. Beside him, a young Halcyon tactical officer monitored the enemy fleet movements, her silver skin dulled by stress and too many sleepless nights. "Ambassador, another council response just came through," Trell announced without looking up. Lyra already knew what it would say. She had memorized the previous 17 responses: tactically unsalvageable, resource allocation priorities, strategic withdrawal, cold words that meant the same thing in any language. You are not worth saving. "Delete it," Lyra said quietly. The colony had been a dream 6 years ago. 40,000 people from 7 different species, all seeking something the galaxy had forgotten how to provide. Peace. Not the enforced peace of council regulations or the nervous peace of trade agreements. Real peace, where a Halcyon child could play with a Corusian youngster without anyone caring about species or homeworld or ancient grievances. Lyra walked to the observation window. The colony spread below like a jewel someone had dropped and forgotten. Gardens where alien flowers grew beside Earth roses that one human botanist had smuggled in as seeds. Markets where food from a dozen worlds filled the air with competing scents. Schools where teachers spoke 6 languages and children learned 7. It had been beautiful once. Now smoke rose from the northern district where a shield failure had let through 3 missiles. The fires were out, but the scars remained. Lyra could see work crews moving through damaged streets, still trying to repair what the next bombardment would destroy again. They never stopped. Even knowing the end approached, they never stopped trying. "Shield integrity at 11%, the tactical officer reported. Her voice cracked slightly. "Estimate 36 hours until complete failure." 36 hours. Lyra had lived 14,000 days, and everything came down to 36 hours. A memory surfaced unbidden. 6 months ago, standing in the Grand Assembly Hall on the Council homeworld. The massive chamber had held representatives from 200 species, each one certain of their importance. Lyra had watched the human delegation arrive with curiosity. Everyone knew about humans, the new species, the ones who had barely achieved slipspace travel before stumbling onto a galactic council patrol. Small people from a small world on the outer rim of nowhere important. The council had admitted them mostly because refusing seemed like more trouble than acceptance. Lyra had approached the human ambassador during a recess. Ambassador Helen Ward stood barely to Lyra's shoulder, with dark skin and eyes that carried weight. They had talked about poetry first. Lyra had been surprised when Helen quoted ancient Halcyon verses, pronunciation nearly perfect. "We studied your culture before coming," Helen had explained with a slight smile. "Earth learned the hard way that understanding others matters more than being understood." They had become friends over the next 3 days. Helen shared stories of human history, the wars and genocides, and slow climb toward something better. Lyra talked about Halcyon philosophy, the belief that all conscious beings deserve dignity and choice. They discovered their peoples wanted similar things from the galaxy. On the final day, as delegations prepared to depart, Lyra had mentioned the colony. Just casual conversation. Helen had listened with intensity that seemed out of place for small talk. "If you ever need help," Helen had said quietly, gripping Lyra's hand with surprising strength, "send word to Earth. We don't abandon people. We remember what it's like to stand alone." Lyra had smiled and thanked her, thinking it a kind gesture from a species too new to understand galactic realities. When powerful species like the Coruscant Empire or the Delphian Federation refused to help, what could humans possibly do? Now, watching her world die by degrees, Lyra wondered if Helen even remembered that conversation. "Ambassador," Trell called out, "I'm detecting unusual activity in the Ravager fleet. They're tightening formation." Lyra turned back to the tactical display. The red dots drew closer, a noose contracting. She had studied Ravager tactics during the long nights. This pattern meant the end game approached. They would mass their firepower, shatter the shields completely, then land ground forces to finish anyone who survived the bombardment. "Prepare the civilian shelters," Lyra ordered. "Route all remaining power to structural integrity fields around the underground sections." Her staff moved to comply. No one asked if it would be enough. They all knew the answer. Lyra walked to the communications station and opened a secure channel. Her hands moved across controls, preparing a data packet. She included tactical information about the Ravager fleet, recordings of the siege, personal messages from colonists to distant families. Everything that would prove Sanctuary Point had existed and fought and mattered, even if the galaxy disagreed. She recorded a final message herself, just a few words to Helen Ward, thanking her for the friendship and the promise, explaining there was no blame in promises broken by distance and reality. The message pod launched during a brief fluctuation in the bombardment pattern. Lyra watched it streak away on the display, a tiny spark of light fleeing into darkness. It would drift until someone found it. Maybe next year, maybe never. Bren Vassal, her security chief, approached with weapons and armor. The old Halcyon warrior had seen 3 wars and carried scars from all of them. "The defenders are ready, Ambassador," he said formally. Then softer, "It has been an honor." "The honor was mine," Lyra replied. She took the weapon he offered and followed him toward the battle that neither expected to survive. 6 months earlier, Helen Ward had stood in her quarters on the council station, staring at her reflection and wondering if the formal diplomatic robes made her look ridiculous. The heavy fabric draped oddly on her human frame, designed for species with different proportions. Behind her reflection, Admiral Richard Torres waited with the patience of someone who had spent 30 years in military service. "You look fine," Torres said without looking up from his data pad. "Stop fidgeting." "I'm not fidgeting," Helen lied, immediately stopping the nervous adjustment of her collar. "I'm calibrating." Torres allowed himself a slight smile. He was reviewing security protocols, always reviewing something. The man treated relaxation like a personal enemy. His dark uniform held more commendations than Helen could name, each one earned in conflicts most people preferred to forget. "First impressions matter," Helen continued, more to herself than Torres. "Earth gets one chance at this." "Then stop worrying about the clothes and focus on the words," Torres replied, finally setting down the pad. "These species have been playing galactic politics for thousands of years. They'll judge us on substance, not style." Helen wished she shared his confidence. Earth's admission to the Galactic Council had been reluctant at best. Humanity had achieved slipspace technology through stubborn determination, and the kind of collaborative science that came from nearly destroying themselves 3 times over. The Council had found them by accident when a patrol investigating pirate activity stumbled onto Earth's outer colonies. The discovery had triggered debates that lasted 2 years. Some Council species wanted to quarantine humanity. Others argued for supervised integration. A few suggested simply ignoring Earth entirely, letting humans develop in isolation until they either matured or destroyed themselves. Eventually, Bureaucratic inertia and the Council's own regulations meant admission became easier than refusal. Helen had read the transcripts. She knew exactly how little most species expected from humanity. The Grand Assembly proved every fear correct. The massive chamber could hold 10,000 delegates, and it seemed designed to make newcomers feel insignificant. Helen and Tors entered to polite applause that held no warmth. Their assigned seats were in a back section, far from the central discussion areas where important species gathered. "Welcome to the kids' table," Tors muttered. Helen elbowed him gently and smiled at the nearest delegates. A Corusian representative looked through her as if she were transparent. Two Delphian diplomats engaged in conversation that pointedly excluded the humans. Helen felt her cheeks burn but kept her expression neutral. The first day involved formal introductions. Each species presented their credentials and contributions to Council society. The Corusian Empire spoke of their military might protecting trade routes. The Delphian Federation highlighted their scientific advances. The Torlian Collective described their economic network spanning 70 systems. When Earth's turn came, Helen spoke of human art and music, of diversity within a single species, of hard lessons learned about cooperation and peace. She mentioned Earth's industrial capacity, carefully avoiding any discussion of military strength. She wanted to emphasize humanity's peaceful intentions. The applause afterward was perfunctory. Helen sat down knowing she had made no impression whatsoever. During the midday recess, she wandered the garden areas surrounding the assembly hall. Alien plants grew in carefully controlled environments, each section representing a different homeworld. Helen found herself in a section labeled Halcyon, admiring flowers that seemed to shift colors based on ambient light. "They respond to emotion," a voice said behind her, "or so our poets claim." Helen turned to find a Halcyon female watching her with genuine interest. The woman stood nearly 7 feet tall, with silver skin that reflected light like polished metal. Her features were angular but elegant, and her eyes held intelligence and kindness in equal measure. "Ambassador Lyra Davin," the woman introduced herself, "Halcyon Republic." "Helen Ward, Earth." Helen extended her hand, then hesitated, unsure if the gesture translated. Lyra took her hand gently, studying the movement. "I have been reading about human customs. This indicates friendship and respect, yes." "Among other things," Helen confirmed, warming to this stranger immediately. They walked together through the gardens, and Helen found herself relaxing for the first time since arriving. Lyra asked questions about Earth not from curiosity but genuine interest. She wanted to understand human philosophy, human art, human dreams for the future. In return, Lyra shared Halcyon culture. She recited poetry in her native language, the words like music, then translated the verses into Common. Helen was surprised to find the poems dealt with themes remarkably similar to human works: love, loss, hope, the search for meaning in a vast universe. "Our peoples are not so different," Lyra observed. "We seek connection, understanding. We hope to leave the galaxy better than we found it." "Then why does the Council treat us like children?" Helen asked before she could stop herself. Lyra's expression softened. "Because the powerful forget they were once weak, because fear masquerades as wisdom, because it is easier to dismiss than to accept." She paused. "The Halcyon Republic remembers what it means to be small. We were nearly destroyed by the Ravager horde 2 centuries ago. The Council debated our worthiness while our worlds burned. What changed? We survived despite them, not because of them. We rebuilt. We proved ourselves through action, not words." Lyra touched one of the flowers and it bloomed brighter. "The Council will judge Earth by what you do, not what you promise." Over the next 3 days, Helen and Lyra met frequently. They discussed philosophy over meals, debated politics during recesses, shared stories late into the station's artificial night. Tors approved quietly, recognizing the strategic value of the friendship, but Helen valued it for simpler reasons. Lyra treated her as an equal. On the final evening, they stood on an observation deck watching ships depart. Lyra mentioned her colony, Sanctuary Point, where species learned to live together without council oversight. "It sounds beautiful," Helen said honestly. "It is fragile," Lyra replied. "The council provides no protection to colonies outside their direct authority. We survive through goodwill and geography." Helen gripped the railing tighter. "If you ever need help, send word to Earth. We don't abandon people. We remember what it's like to stand alone." Lyra smiled, but Helen saw doubt behind the expression. Earth was too small, too new, too far away to matter. Helen wished she could promise more. Instead, she made sure Lyra had secure communication codes, just in case, just in hope. The message pod drifted through slip space for 9 days before Earth Defense Command's deep space sensors detected its transponder signal. Recovery crews brought it to Geneva headquarters, where technicians extracted data that made hardened analysts go pale and silent. Admiral Richard Torres received the alert at 300 hours. He arrived at command 20 minutes later, uniform crisp despite the hour, to find the situation room already crowded with senior staff. No one spoke as the main display showed footage from Sanctuary Point. Lyra Davin's face filled the screen, exhausted but composed. She described the siege methodically, providing tactical data about Ravager fleet positions and capabilities. Then she switched to personal messages. Colonists recording final words for families who would never see them alive. A Delphian mother singing to her child. An elderly Halcyon man reading poetry. A human botanist named Dr. Nina Cross explaining which Earth plants had adapted best to alien soil, as if her research mattered more than her impending death. The footage ended with Lyra's final message to Helen Ward, thanking her for friendship, apologizing for bothering Earth with problems too large and too distant. Hoping someone would remember that Sanctuary Point had existed and tried to be something better. Torres watched the screen go dark. Around him, officers and analysts waited for orders. He could see the calculations in their eyes. Sanctuary Point was 47 light-years away. The Ravager fleet numbered 30 warships. Earth's relationship with the Galactic Council remained fragile. Intervention would have consequences. "Options," Torres said simply. Commander Lisa Okonkwo, head of strategic planning, pulled up deployment scenarios. "We can mobilize First Expeditionary Fleet within 6 hours. Slip space transit would take approximately 9 days. Add 1 day for final approach and tactical positioning." She paused. "Sir, even at maximum speed, we would arrive roughly 3 weeks after this message was recorded." "They might already be dead," someone muttered. "Or they might be holding on," Torres countered. "Continue." "The Ravager horde operates in that sector without council interference," Okonkwo continued. "They target independent colonies and unaligned worlds. Council policy classifies them as a regional problem not worth significant resources." "How convenient," Torres said flatly. "What about our fleet's strength?" "First Expeditionary consists of 50 capital ships," Okonkwo replied. 12 carriers, 20 destroyers, 18 cruisers. Full marine complement, support vessels, medical ships. We are rated for extended deep space operations." Defense Minister Sarah Chen stepped forward. She had fought in the last major Earth conflict, back when humans only killed each other. "Admiral, we need to consider the political implications. Earth intervening in Council space without authorization could trigger diplomatic incidents we're not prepared to handle." "The Council abandoned those people," Torres replied. "Yes, and the Council has made clear they consider that their prerogative," Chen countered. "We intervene, we set precedent. We make enemies of species who already distrust us. We might trigger sanctions or worse." Torres turned to his intelligence officer, Commander David Liu. "Your assessment of Ravager capabilities." Liu pulled up tactical analyses. They rely on overwhelming force and terror tactics. Ship technology is roughly equivalent to late 21st century Earth designs. They have numbers but lack coordination. Discipline appears minimal based on observed behaviors. He highlighted specific engagements. They have never fought a peer or near-peer opponent. They prey on the weak. Then they've never fought humans, Torres observed. The room fell quiet. Everyone present understood what Torres was suggesting. Earth had joined the Galactic Council, promising peaceful cooperation. Most species viewed humans as minor players, too new and too primitive to matter in galactic affairs. An aggressive military action would shatter that perception completely. Admiral, we should consult with the civilian government, Chen pressed. This decision is too large for military authority alone. Torres nodded. Agreed, get me President Anderson. 15 minutes later, the president's face appeared on secure connection. Margaret Anderson had led Earth through first contact and council admission. She listened to Torres' briefing without interruption, her expression unreadable. How many people at Sanctuary Point? Anderson asked when Torres finished. 40,000, Madam President. Multiple species, but the colony was initially established with significant human support. Dr. Nina Cross is there, the botanist who helped develop our first off-world agricultural protocols. Anderson was quiet for a long moment. The council will condemn us. Yes, ma'am. Allied species will question our intentions. Likely, ma'am. We will spend years rebuilding diplomatic relationships we've barely established. I understand, ma'am. Anderson leaned forward and Torres saw steel in her eyes. Admiral, my grandmother fled genocide. She survived because one person refused to look away when everyone else did. She taught me that power without compassion is just another form of violence. She straightened. But power with compassion, used to protect those who cannot protect themselves, that is what separates civilization from barbarism. Torres waited. You have authorization to deploy 1st Expeditionary Fleet, Anderson stated formally. Rules of engagement are at your discretion. Those people called for help. Earth answers. Thank you, Madam President. Richard, Anderson added, using his first name for the first time Torres could remember. Bring them home. Torres turned to his staff. Commands flowed with practiced efficiency. 1st Expeditionary Fleet received deployment orders. Crews scrambled to their ships. Supply depots loaded provisions for extended operations. Marine units boarded assault carriers. Medical teams prepared field hospitals. Torres walked through the headquarters toward the shuttle that would take him to his flagship, EDS Indomitable. He passed through corridors where staff worked frantically, coordinating the largest deployment in Earth's brief spacefaring history. In the shuttle, rising toward orbital docks, Torres reviewed tactical data one final time. Sanctuary Point faced impossible odds. The Ravager fleet possessed numerical advantage in position. Even if the colony survived until Earth arrived, the battle would be brutal. But Torres had spent 30 years learning one truth. Humans did not surrender. Humans did not abandon their own. And humanity owed debts to those who showed kindness when kindness was rare. The Indomitable loomed ahead, a kilometer of weapons and armor and human determination. Torres smiled grimly. The Ravagers were about to learn what it meant to threaten Earth's friends. Around the planet, identical scenes played out as 50 warships prepared for slip space. Crews from every Earth nation worked side by side. Chinese and American, European and African, South American and Australian. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves learning to cooperate. Now they would show the galaxy what that cooperation built. 9 days to Sanctuary Point. 9 days to deliver Earth's answer to those who believed no one was coming. The shields collapsed at dawn. Lyra felt the change in the command center before alarms confirmed it. a subtle shift in the air as protective energy fields that had held for 23 days finally surrendered to physics and desperation. Around her, exhausted staff stared at displays showing nothing but red warnings. All defensive grids offline, the tactical officer reported mechanically. Ravager fleet advancing to strike range. Lyra watched the enemy ships move into bombardment formation, precise and unhurried. They knew resistance was over. Now came the extermination. Evacuate command center, Lyra ordered. Move all personnel to underground shelters. Transfer control systems to backup locations. Her staff hesitated. Trell, the Delphian communications officer, turned all four eyes toward her. Ambassador, where will you go? Where I am needed, Lyra replied. She touched his shoulder gently. Go, protect the children. Make sure someone survives to remember. They left reluctantly, taking emergency data cores and whatever equipment could be carried. Lyra waited until the command center emptied, then walked to the observation window one final time. Her colony spread below, scarred but still standing. Smoke rose from a dozen districts. Fires burned where bombardment had penetrated failing shields. Yet people still moved through streets, still helped neighbors, still refused to surrender to despair. Lyra descended into the city. Security Chief Bren Vassal met her at ground level with a squad of defenders. The old warrior had organized resistance into coordinated units spread throughout the colony. They lacked heavy weapons or military training, but they had courage and intimate knowledge of every street and building. The Ravagers will land within the hour, Bren reported. We have positioned defenders at key locations. Medical stations are established in reinforced structures. Civilians are in the deepest shelters we could manage. How many defenders? Lyra asked. 3,000. Bren's voice carried weight, against an army. They moved through empty streets toward the northern district where landing zones were most likely. Lyra carried a weapon she barely knew how to use, but Bren had insisted. Around them, other defenders took positions in buildings and behind barricades constructed from rubble. Dr. Nina Cross had refused evacuation to the deep shelters. The human scientist had converted a reinforced warehouse into a field hospital, working alongside Halcyon and Delphian medical staff. When Lyra arrived to check on preparations, Nina was organizing supplies with methodical efficiency. You should be in the shelters, Lyra said. Nina looked up from medical scanners she was calibrating. The human woman had lost weight during the siege, her face gaunt and eyes shadowed, but her hands remained steady. I took an oath, Ambassador, all life any species. That oath doesn't have a clause about personal safety. You may die here. We all may die here, Nina replied. At least I will die doing something that matters. Lyra helped arrange medical supplies, grateful for the distraction. Outside, the sky darkened as Ravager landing craft descended through atmosphere. The deep rumble of engines shook buildings already weakened by bombardment. The first Ravagers landed in the northern district. Lyra watched from a defensive position as assault ramps dropped and enemy soldiers poured out. They were massive creatures, 8 feet tall with thick armor plating and weapons designed for overwhelming firepower. They moved with confidence, expecting no real resistance. Bren gave the signal. Defenders opened fire from concealed positions. The first wave of Ravagers fell, surprised by organized opposition, but more came, adapting quickly. They advanced behind portable shields, suppressing defender positions with sustained weapons fire. Lyra fired her weapon, unsure if she hit anything. Around her, defenders fell. A young Halcyon woman screamed as plasma fire caught her. A Delphian man dragged his wounded companion to safety. The Ravagers pushed forward relentlessly. Fall back to secondary positions, Bren ordered through communication devices. Fighting retreat, stay coordinated. The battle became a nightmare of running and firing and watching people die. Lyra found herself separated from Bren's unit, trapped in a collapsed building with 15 civilians who had hidden rather than reach shelters. 3 were children, terrified and crying. She held them as the building shook from nearby explosions. A Halcyon parent shielded a Delphian child with her own body. An elderly Corusian man sang softly, some prayer from his homeworld. Lyra added her voice, and others joined until their songs mixed in languages no one fully understood but everyone felt. Above them, Ravager communications suddenly erupted in frantic signals. Lyra heard it through her emergency scanner, alien words but the tone unmistakable. Alarm, confusion, fear. War Master Gul Varak commanded the Ravager fleet from his flagship, watching ground forces systematically destroy resistance. The colony would be erased within hours. Then his fleet would move to the next target, continuing the expansion that had consumed 40 worlds. His second-in-command interrupted the monitoring. War Master, we are detecting massive quantum signatures at the system edge. Varak barely glanced at the display, probably Council observation vessels, watching from safe distance while the Ravagers did work the Council lacked stomach for. Ignore them. Sir, the signatures are not consistent with Council vessels. Energy readings suggest military-grade slip-space drives, multiple contacts. Varak focused on tactical displays. His sensors showed nothing. Then suddenly 50 contacts appeared as if materializing from nowhere. Massive capital ships in formation, approaching at high velocity. Impossible, Varak muttered. Who would dare? Unknown ship configurations, his officer reported. Design patterns do not match any known species. Wait, receiving identification signal. A pause. They claim to be from Earth. Varak searched his memory. Earth meant nothing. Some minor species recently admitted to the Council, barely worth noticing. 50 capital ships. Impossible. Their entire fleet cannot number more than primitive system defense vessels. The approaching fleet transmitted a message on open channels. A human voice, speaking common with strange accent. Attention Ravager forces. This is Admiral Richard Torres of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are attacking civilians under protection. Stand down immediately or be destroyed. Varak laughed. They threaten us. These primitives dare. He opened communication channels. Human vessels, you face the Ravager horde. Withdraw now or share the fate of this colony. The response came instantly. We don't negotiate with predators. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. Varak cut the channel and turned to his weapons officer. Destroy them. In the rubble below, Lyra heard new sounds. Different engines, different weapons. She crawled to a gap in the collapsed wall and looked up. Human ships descended through smoke and fire. The EDS Indomitable emerged from slip space with 49 other warships in perfect formation, a declaration written in metal and determination. Admiral Richard Torres stood on the bridge, studying tactical displays that showed the Ravager fleet positioned around Sanctuary Point like parasites on a dying host. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander David Kim announced from the tactical station. The young officer had barely slept during the 9-day transit, running combat simulations until he could predict Ravager responses before they happened. Torres nodded once. Execute approach pattern Delta. Fighter wings launch when we reach engagement range. All ships maintain formation discipline. The human fleet accelerated toward the planet. Torres watched the Ravager vessels react with confused hesitation. They outnumbered the human force by 30 to 50, but their formation showed uncertainty. They had likely never faced opponents willing to challenge them directly. War Master Varak's transmission came through demanding withdrawal. Torres listened to the arrogant threats and felt only cold focus. He had commanded fleets in 3 wars against human opponents. He understood violence in ways these predators could not imagine. 30 seconds to respond, Torres said calmly. After that, we demonstrate why threatening Earth's allies is a terminal mistake. The seconds counted down. Ravager ships held position, weapons charging. Tors saw their decision before they made it. They would fight because backing down contradicted everything their culture valued. "They are firing, Admiral," Kim reported. "All ships evasive pattern Gamma," Tors ordered. "Return fire at will." The battle began with sudden violence. Ravager energy weapons lanced toward the human fleet in concentrated volleys. Earth's ships scattered in coordinated patterns, point defense systems intercepting what evasion could not avoid. Then humanity's weapons answered. Railguns fired solid projectiles at fractions of light speed. Missiles with adaptive guidance systems swirled around Ravager shields. Directed energy weapons targeted with precision that made enemy defenses useless. The first Ravager ship disintegrated in seconds, torn apart by weapons it had never encountered before. Tors watched his displays with professional detachment. "Target their command vessels. I want their coordination disrupted. Fighter squadrons, proceed to ground support operations." The Indomitable's fighter bays opened, releasing hundreds of small craft that dove toward the planet's surface like angry insects. Tors trusted his pilots. They had trained for exactly this scenario. On Sanctuary Point, Lyra watched in disbelief as human dropships cut through smoke and fire. They landed with controlled violence, ramps dropping before the ships fully settled. Soldiers in powered armor emerged, weapons tracking for threats with mechanical precision. A human voice boomed from external speakers, translated into common. "Civilians remain in shelter. We are Earth Defense Forces. We are here to help." Ravager ground troops turned to face the new threat. They outnumbered the initial human landing force 5-1, but the humans advanced without hesitation. Lyra saw them move in coordinated units, covering each other with practiced efficiency. The first engagement lasted 30 seconds. Human weapons cut through Ravager positions with terrifying accuracy. Where Ravagers relied on overwhelming firepower, humans used precision and coordination. They flanked, concentrated fire, withdrew and repositioned before enemies could respond effectively. Commander Alex Okonkwo led the Marine Ground Forces personally. She had studied every record available on Ravager tactics during the transit from Earth. Now she put that knowledge to use, exploiting weaknesses her enemy did not know they had. "Second wave, secure the medical facilities," Okonkwo ordered through combat channels. "Third wave, push east toward civilian shelters. Stay coordinated, watch your sectors." Her Marines moved through streets littered with debris and bodies. They encountered Ravager units and destroyed them with efficient brutality. But Okonkwo saw her troops pause to help wounded colonists, saw them check collapsed buildings for survivors, saw them maintain humanity even in combat. Nina Cross heard fighting outside her makeshift hospital and prepared for the worst. Then the door burst open and human soldiers in armor entered, weapons sweeping for threats. A female Marine approached, removing her helmet. "Dr. Cross, I'm Sarah Obi, Earth Medical Corps. We have supplies and additional medical personnel. Where do you need us?" Nina stared for a moment, overwhelmed. Then training reasserted itself. "Triage area left side. Critical cases right side. We need surgical support and blood substitutes for multiple species." "Already bringing it in," Sarah replied, signaling to troops outside. Human medics flooded into the hospital carrying equipment Nina had not seen in weeks. In orbit, the battle reached its conclusion with brutal inevitability. Tors had divided the Ravager fleet, isolating ships and destroying them systematically. Earth's weapons, designed through centuries of human conflict, proved devastatingly effective against opponents who relied on intimidation rather than tactical competence. "Enemy flagship attempting to flee," Kim reported. "Pursue," Tors ordered. "I want that ship intact if possible. Board and capture the commander." The Indomitable closed on War Master Varek's vessel, matching its maneuvers effortlessly. Boarding pods launched, magnetically locking to the enemy hull. Marine teams cut through armor and poured into the ship, fighting room by room against increasingly desperate ravagers. Commander Okonkwo's brother, Captain Daniel Okonkwo, led the boarding action. His team fought through 3 decks before reaching the command center. Varek stood with his remaining officers, weapons raised. "Surrender now and you live," Daniel stated in common. "Fight and you die here." Varek snarled defiance and fired. The Marines returned fire instantly. Varek fell, wounded but alive. His officers dropped weapons and raised hands in submission. On the planet's surface, the last Ravager positions collapsed as human forces pushed through with overwhelming momentum. Lyra emerged from the collapsed building to see human soldiers helping colonists from shelters. She saw medics treating wounded of every species without distinction. She saw engineers already assessing damage and planning repairs. A human officer approached. Older man, dark uniform with too many medals. He saluted formally. "Ambassador Davin, I am Admiral Richard Torres. Ambassador Ward sent us." He smiled slightly. "We apologize for the delay." Lyra tried to speak, but words failed. She had prepared for death, accepted it, made peace with ending. Now humans stood before her offering rescue as casually as neighbors helping with heavy furniture. "You came," she finally managed. "Everyone said no one would come." "Earth keeps its promises," Torres replied simply. "Always." 3 weeks after Earth arrived, Sanctuary Point began to remember what peace felt like. The constant rumble of bombardment had been replaced by the sounds of reconstruction. Human engineering teams worked alongside colonists, teaching repair techniques while rebuilding damaged infrastructure. Medical stations operated with full supplies for the first time in months. Children played in streets being cleared of rubble. Lyra stood in what would become a memorial plaza, watching workers lay foundation stones. Human architects had collaborated with Halcyon designers to create something that honored all species who defended the colony. The result combined aesthetic sensibilities from 7 different cultures into unexpected harmony. Helen Ward arrived on a diplomatic shuttle 4 days after the battle. She found Lyra supervising reconstruction efforts, thinner and scarred but alive. They embraced without words, friendship tested by fire and proven genuine. "I am sorry we did not arrive sooner," Helen said quietly. "You arrived when we needed you most," Lyra replied. "That is enough." They walked through recovering districts together. Everywhere, humans worked beside colonists. A Marine helped an elderly Delphian repair his home's water systems. Engineers taught Halcyon technicians how to reinforce structural supports. Medical staff cross-trained with local doctors, sharing techniques from dozens of worlds. Dr. Nina Cross had barely left the hospital since Earth arrived. Sarah Obi and other human medics had integrated seamlessly into the facility, working shifts that exceeded regulations while treating hundreds of wounded. When Helen visited, she found Nina training a young Coruscant doctor on advanced surgical techniques. "You could have evacuated," Helen observed. "When the shields fell, you could have hidden." Nina continued working on her patient without looking up. "I could have done many things. I chose to stay because these people needed help. Same reason your fleet came 47 light years." She glanced at Helen briefly. "Humanity keeps showing me that we are better than our worst moments." Admiral Torres managed fleet operations from the Indomitable while maintaining a garrison force on the planet. He met with Lyra and Helen to discuss long-term security arrangements. "The Ravager horde will not return here," Torres stated. "We destroyed or captured their fleet. War Master Varek is in custody. Word will spread quickly about what happened to those who attacked this colony." "The Council will not approve of Earth's military presence," Lyra said carefully. "The Council abandoned you," Torres replied without heat. They have no standing to complain about who protects you now, but I understand your concern. We are not conquerors or occupiers. He pulled up strategic displays. Earth proposes mutual defense agreements. You maintain sovereignty. We provide security guarantees and emergency response capabilities. Lyra studied the proposal. It was generous to the point of suspicion. What does Earth gain from this arrangement? Allies, Tors answered simply. Friends, partners who share our values. The galaxy is large and often cruel. Those who stand together survive. Helen added her perspective. We are not asking for bases or control. We want relationships built on trust. You help us understand this galaxy. We help you remain free to chart your own course. Over the following days, other species sent representatives to Sanctuary Point. Some came out of curiosity about humanity's military capabilities. Others came because they faced similar threats the Council ignored. A delegation from the Torlian Collective arrived seeking defense agreements. 3 small species requested protection from aggressive neighbors. Earth's intervention had demonstrated something the galaxy had forgotten. Power did not require cruelty. Strength could be exercised in defense of others rather than domination. The humans fought with terrifying effectiveness, but showed mercy to defeated enemies and compassion to those they rescued. The Council convened emergency sessions to discuss Earth's actions. Debates raged for days. Some species condemned human aggression. Others quietly admitted the Ravagers had been a problem the Council chose to ignore. A few recognized that humanity's emergence as a military power changed galactic dynamics in ways no one fully understood yet. Helen addressed the Council formally 2 weeks after the battle. She stood in the Grand Assembly, no longer seated in the back but at the central podium where important matters were discussed. The Council asked what humanity brings to galactic civilization, Helen began. We bring the belief that all conscious beings deserve protection and dignity. We bring the willingness to act when others debate. We bring the promise that no one stands alone if they call for Earth's help. She displayed footage from Sanctuary Point, the siege, the desperate defense, Earth's arrival, the reconstruction now underway. She showed colonists of different species working together, human and alien united by common purpose. We do not seek to replace the Council or challenge its authority, Helen continued. We seek partnership with those who share our values. The galaxy is large enough for many different approaches to coexistence. Earth chooses to stand with those who need allies. The speech resonated beyond the Council chambers. Across hundreds of worlds, species evaluated their own security arrangements. Small worlds that had felt vulnerable suddenly saw options. Aggressive species realized easy prey had gained a defender. The galactic balance shifted subtly but significantly. On Sanctuary Point, the Memorial Plaza opened with ceremonies attended by humans and colonists. Lyra unveiled the central monument, a pillar of stone inscribed in 7 languages. The words were simple but carried weight. They believed no one was coming. Earth proved them wrong. May all who stand here remember that courage and compassion can arrive even from unexpected directions. Helen stood beside her as speakers from each species shared stories of loss and survival and hope. When the human contingent's turn came, Admiral Tors spoke briefly. Earth lost billions learning to be better than our worst instincts. We carry those lessons as responsibility, not badge of honor. When we heard Sanctuary Point's call, we faced a choice. We chose to be who we wish we had been for our own people during darker times. We chose to prove that the strong can protect rather than dominate. He paused, looking at the diverse crowd gathered. This is only the beginning. Earth extends its hand to any species, any world, any people who seek partners rather than masters. Together, we can build something better than what came before. That night, Lyra and Helen sat on a hill overlooking the colony. Ships moved in orbit, human vessels maintaining watch alongside colony defense platforms. Below, lights glowed in repaired buildings. Somewhere, children laughed. "The Council fears what you represent," Lyra said quietly. "Change always frightens those comfortable with current arrangements," Helen replied. "But fear passes, results remain." Lyra smiled. "You are already changing the galaxy. Small species speak of Earth with hope. Large species speak of Earth with respect. Both are necessary." Above them, stars shone with light that had traveled for years to reach this moment. Somewhere out there, other colonies faced similar threats. Other people waited for rescue that might never come. But now they had reason to hope. Now they knew someone might answer their call. Earth had arrived, and the galaxy would never be quite the same.